Okay, so this is the same session as was just we had in Finnish, but as there were some English-speaking persons on the call, let's have this session also in English, and that will be the kind of practicality every week. So if we have English-speaking persons, we will have the English session, but kind of it makes no sense to present it for people if there are no audience. So kind of whenever you have time and topic is interesting, definitely you will get the English session after the encrypted one. So this week it's about the Translytical apps. I don't know if that's correct, kind of whether that will be a final term after the previous session, but Microsoft uses this term by themselves. I'm not sure if that's like an inside joke or something, but kind of if you in your favorite search engine put in Translytical, you will end up into the correct documentation pages regarding this new functionality. This functionality we are talking about is heavily tied to the Fabric data functions. So Fabric data functions was a feature we covered a few weeks ago. It's basically a new object type in Fabric warehouse where we will have possibility to run our own code with very lightweight infrastructure, basically like Azure functions. And we can also easily configure connections into those functions. So you can kind of create database connections for your function, and then you have API which you use to query and interact with the connections. So, but there was a separate session available also on the YouTube that covers this topic. So please visit that regarding if and when regarding the functions. Functions in general, when they were available, it was possible to call them via notebooks or pipelines, but eventually it will be possible to call them from anywhere, any Fabric workload. And now, like first add-on after the initial launch, Power BI is among those other workloads that will be able to call Fabric data functions. And here I have few data functions. First one is actually the template one from the kind of when you create a new function and choose that please include template, this one will come up. And then I have some functions that interact with the data itself. I have a Fabric warehouse where I have dim currency 2 table. 2 just because I don't want to ruin my original dim currency if I will be having a demo somewhere and then this weird currency names will appear. So this is just to kind of for this demo that we will update this currency 2. Then I will also have in this demo a Power BI desktop. This one is now import mode connection to on-premise database, which has the AdventureWorks data, plus one additional connection for the dim currency 2, which is visible here. This is just to show you how it works. Kind of, I understand that it makes no real life sense to call a function, update something in the Fabric, and then call on-premise database, because you can be sure that nothing has changed on the on-premise database on that time. But it's just to show you the structure, kind of what happens behind the scenes, how this works, and it will come clear when we kind of go further on the demo. So in addition to that, you need to enable the Translytical preview feature. And on the preview features, I will not visit that because there could be something that is kind of I'm not allowed to share. And then you need one of the, or you could need these new slicer types, kind of these new text button slicer and text slicer and list slicer, which are like completely new ones. Those is something you would also need in case you need to input some textual things into your functions. But they are available as a preview feature also. Just go to the preview feature, enable the new new slicers, and that will do the trick. So first, let's create a simple select statement. I hope I have it now. Not yet, but I have it over here. So, oh, sorry. The simple simple first one was the name thing. So I will remove everything from this text box. Demo name. Put something in the text box. And first thing I can do on the this new functionality is that I can insert a button. It can be any button. Now I used in the Finnish version, I used the eye icon. Now I will use the back icon. Kind of it really doesn't matter what the button is, but there is a button. And then when I activate the button inside the properties or formattings, I have among all the old actions, I have a new action called data function. And this data function action now, when selected, asks for workspace. I will choose the workspace where I have the data function. Then I don't know why they call it a function set here, because it's a data function in the user interface, but basically this is the object, data function object. And I have UDF kahvihetki as my data function, which I have created here, not here, but this one, which I showed. This is the UDF kahvihetki. And this one has this hello Fabric function or method. And this one is basically input string, output string, welcome to Fabric functions, input string, and current date time. That's basically kind of what it does. It doesn't do a lot, but that's like a hello world for our thing. So I will call that hello Fabric. And as that function was created so that it takes one parameter, it asks that parameter now. And I can choose a value from my text box here. And now I don't know why this is a GUID or this type of string. It could be my preview version of the Power BI desktop or something, but that's how it lands. I know that that's the thing. And sorry that this box was above that, but there is a demo name. And now when I call this, I will control click this. It will call the function. Function will return. Then this report will do an import, kind of refresh the report, and return me whatever the function returned. So welcome to Fabric functions demo name, because demo name we inputted as a parameter, and then the date time, because that's what the function did. That's exactly what the function was developed for. Welcome to the Fabric functions, blah, blah, blah. So, and as you saw, it did the complete refresh for the report. So that's based, if I choose this button, that's based on this refresh the report equals on functionality. When I have that selected, what will happen is that when the function returns successfully, it will do a refresh. And that refresh is exactly same as clicking here. And that kind of is the key thing to think how this function works. So if you have a very complex report which take a huge amount of CUs to run, it will take a huge amount of CUs to refresh it. So basically kind of that data function is not some kind of smart thing that you could change values inside the report or something. It calls a function. When it returns, it refreshes the page. That's what it does. And then you can do inside a function, you can do modifications, and that's like the clever thing here. So now I have few different versions of the update functionality. But before we go there, you have to remember that when interacting with the Power BI, the function has to return string. If function returns something else, like in this case, I have a function which basically invokes a select statement, it executes the query. Query is, in my case, a select statement. Then it returns this as an object. So list kind of all the result set as an object, but it's a list because that's how the function should work. It is returning multiple rows, multiple columns, so it's an object in list in this case. So if we try to invoke that type of function, so here it would be the query data from warehouse function, and then I would input here my select statement. What I can do is that I can of course write select statement like I did earlier to here, but I actually have here a select statement, or I have a measure which outputs a select statement. It can be you can build up this measure as complex as you want, but in my case now, this is like a standard string that it outputs, but it's a measure. And then I can go to my button, and then instead of choosing this field, I can go to the FX. And on the FX, I can choose either from any field and then choose some aggregation over there, or I can choose a measure. So for example, the select clause. And then if I click OK, what does this do now is that it as a parameter for this function call, it will pass in the measure, which is now a static select statement. But anyway, so it will call, but it will not do anything because the function agreement was not good. List is not accepted as a return type. It always has to return a string, and that's kind of key thing on Fabric data functions on Power BI. So it's not I cannot use this to retrieve data as a return. That's basically what I'm trying to say here. Then I have a few other functions. I have function which takes a query as an input. Don't use this in production. I'm using like a query, sending query and running that. That's not what I want you to run in production, but this is like a good way to show how it works. So it takes a query as an input string. Then it takes a query currency key as an integer. And then it takes the warehouse connection I have configured, runs the query with the parameter, and then commits and closes the connection. This is an important thing, that you will commit the transaction, because data functions work in a way that they have an implicit transaction. So if you don't commit, it will roll back. So basically that we want to commit always if we want those changes to be permanent on the database. Okay, so this one takes two parameters. Then let's have our query. I have it here. And let's put it over here. And then let's call this, let's put there in the string English, because this was our English version of the demo. And then I will change this function call to be, instead of this one, I will, that was the Finnish version. This one was our English version. This English version, I will choose to dim currency 2, because that was the function I wanted to call. Then it takes two parameters. And for the query, I want to use now this text box. And for this currency key, I want to use, for example, as a first example, I will use from dim currency. I want to use currency key, and it's a numerical thing, so I have different aggregations. I will use the minimum, which is 1. I know that. So this one will now have 1 as currency key and query coming from here. So it should change this thing over here. 1, that one. So if I now invoke this, it worked because it started to refresh. That means that it worked. It will do the import thing because this is how I can kind of make this slower than it normally is. And then I now have English over there because the parameters were 1 for currency key, and here I have a currency key equals question mark, which is on the Python, this library, Python query library. These are transferred as parameters. So then I injected the parameter over there. So kind of that's why this one changed, and it returned query executed successfully because that's what the function returns as a string. And now, if we close this, we could make this more complex. So for example, here I have get one measure, which basically takes maximum from this currency key. So you can see it over here. If I choose 5, that one is 5. If I choose 9, that's 9. 13, that's 13. So if I would change this action we have, that instead of what we already had as a kind of this minimum of currency key, instead of that, if I would pick up this measure of ours as an input string, then it starts to become dynamic. It's 13 now, or 10 now, and if I here change this currency name now to be something like dynamic over here, like this, something dynamic, and I choose 8, for example, let's hope, or 6. I'm just, okay, it was in the editing mode. Now it's not in the editing mode. 6 is selected, and I would trigger the function call. It gets that 6 as an input. And then basically this one changes because it will do the refresh after the function call, and I'm now quite dynamically kind of sending the parameters. So this is the way you can kind of quite easily create very complex report where you choose some slicers and kind of do things, and then you have something which you call a function, and then that could change the data and then kind of come back. And now if we think about this, this can be a direct lake model. So then if it's a direct lake model, you still have kind of, you don't have to query the SQL database. You can use the direct lake model and kind of interact. So you will have all the DAX functionalities. It's just the tabular model engine with all the time intelligence functions which you are missing on the kind of SQL direct query, so SQL query part. But you still can interact with the model, because if it's a lakehouse and you invoke a update statement against the lakehouse, it will do the trick. Now I had a warehouse, so I was I was using a warehouse, but you can actually nowadays do a direct lake model on top of the warehouse, so it will work also against that. But then I would not have that import mode here, so that's why I used direct query. But it works kind of in a direct lake model as well. So good. That's kind of in short what the write back / data function calling from the Power BI is.